You are now tuned in to the Today Show. My name is Matt Lauer, and I am a newsman, serial rapist, probably a serial pedophile, and member of the Hollywood elite that tells you how to live your... No, I'm just joking. This is the Glofcast, Episode 2, Marjorie's Porridge. So, before we get into the main bit, I want to share some Infinity War spoilers with all of you. If you're one of those people that gets dramatically upset by spoilers, turn this podcast off and get a real problem, because you're a little bitch. No, I'm just kidding. But without further ado, here are some Infinity War spoilers. Thanos spreads his Anos for Gamora, which actually ends up giving him gonorrhea. I'm well aware of the father-daughter dynamic at play there, but this actually makes the spoiler that much more surprising. And I've heard you've probably seen the dust memes around. The dust comes out of the anus of Thanos, which gives most other characters the sexually transmitted disease in question as well. In addition, Thanos gets all the Infinity Stones except for one, the Kidney Stone, which he must pass, or all of the other stones will not work. So there's that. And in addition, Loki is alive. So, yeah, he's alive at some point. So, that is the Infinity War spoilers. So I hope you're now prepared for when you walk into the movie. And so this podcast today is going to be about a brand new sitcom coming to you on BBC here in the next few weeks. So this was actually, the sitcom itself was inspired by a post on the website Clickhole, where they were talking about new BBC British shows that are up and coming, with Marjorie's Porridge being one of them. So here we are. I'm going to set the stage for the sitcom. So it's done similar in the style of Father Ted. If you don't know what that is, that's kind of like the English Seinfeld in a way back in the 90s. And other similar mid-90s British sitcoms, in that the humor of the show... It's largely surrealist with a dash of black comedy. And it's also largely reminiscent of Adult Swim shows such as Super Jail, Marjorie's Porridge in particular, since there is, in this show, Marjorie's Porridge, at least one death per episode, I think. But the characters regenerate every episode as well, so there's really not much lost with regards to that. So there isn't much continuity between episodes, but there is a little bit. And when there is continuity, generally it does run for only a few episodes at most. So it uses death and violence as a comedic device, similar in a Quentin Tarantino kind of way almost. Whereas he didn't really use it as much a comedic device, but he just kind of had a large irreverence for it. So in this show, it's not necessarily something to be mourned, so I guess you could call that a testament to something like a Seinfeldian nihilistic, it's always sunny type of thing. So if we're going to be talking in terms of Father Ted, which is what this show is similar to, the show Father Ted was characterized by Father Ted, who was the quote-unquote straight man of the show, kind of the rational, pretty typical rational guy. And then he was a straight man surrounded by caricatures. So we have the alcoholic Father Jack, or the dumb, foolish Father Dougal. And it was similar to Seinfeld in that it had the postmodern Seinfeld-like mid-90s ironic humor, which was in fact a large influence on the show. But it had a Tarantino... No, actually, never mind. Sorry, my notes are a little bit strange. So... yeah, like I said before, Marjorie's Porridge had a glorification and comedification of death and violence, so similar to Quentin Tarantino in that regard. And Marjorie's Porridge, instead of having the straight man being kind of the main focus of the show and he's just surrounded by caricatures, Marjorie's Porridge flips that dynamic on its head by having Marjorie herself be the caricature. So she's kind of the caricature of the show, surrounded by the normal, dull people who they excuse her antics as something that she can't control, even when she can. So, on to the main synopsis of the show. There's the main character, Marjorie. So, she's like a 1950s style, elderly, 83-year-old British nanny. Mouthy yet sweet, normally. She dresses like Mary Poppins and has a mix of mild Alzheimer's and moderate alcoholism. Every episode starts the same. Marjorie starts her breakfast off with a bowl of porridge and a pint of scotch in the house of her sensible granddaughter Penelope and her granddaughter's family, including her somewhat pretentious, the old money country club guy, Nigel, the only one who actually ever calls Marjorie out on her bullshit, as well as their children, the 13-year-old Henry and 10-year-old daughter Abigail. So all of this is set in the very quaint, small English countryside village of Shartworth Brown. And I'm going to predict it's going to be about a one-season show. It's going to get absolutely terrible ratings. And there's going to be about 6 episodes, which I will kind of go through with you. So without further ado, this is Season 1 of Marjorie's Porridge, going to be on BBC very soon. So be on the lookout for that. Season 1, Episode 1. Marjorie, it starts off with Marjorie eating her porridge and downing her pint of scotch, and then goes for her morning walk. So several of the premises of the show, that's kind of basically what happens. There are a few more premises where the family will be talking about something on the radio, and that will often set the scene for what the episode's going to be about. So she actually passes the local pub for a few more pints because, this is a sitcom and alcoholism is funny. So there she finds Father George, the town's local Anglican priest who has low-key been trying to get into Marjorie's trousers for decades. He's one of those corrupt priests. Maybe, but he's Anglican, so he continues to buy them rounds until he is blackout drunk, but Marjorie is actually containing herself. This little old lady can hold her booze very well. So eventually she gets a bit bored of Father George and decides to leave, and then passes a laundromat knowing full well it is a Magdalen laundry. So it's what a Magdalen laundry is. It's a sweatshop traditionally used by the Catholic Church. It's not the Anglican. In this particular episode, it is the Catholic Church. It was for problematic or fallen women, such as orphans and prostitutes. So it could really be a variety. It was never a good thing, but that is irrelevant for our purposes right now. So Marjorie goes in and tries to free all of the orphans and hookers who, for some reason, call it a bit of Stockholm Syndrome, folks, but they do not feel like leaving. So maybe this particular laundry has decent conditions. Who knows, man? This is just a rough synopsis of the pilot. But Marjorie actually ends up headbutting a nun into a bin, so it breaks her hips and kills her. And this actually triggers a town-wide investigation for the supposed murder of this nun. Marjorie returns home in a drunken stupor. She is pretty much always drunk in this sitcom, so she decides to tell her family about the wonderful walk she had that she always kinds of goes about, and the family is crowded around the radio and hears about the death of the nun, to which Marjorie says, "Oh yeah, that was me." And the family just laughs it up. They're just like, yeah, it's just kind of, oh, Marjorie. And then the police show up, find out that Marjorie killed the nun, and the constable says something to the effect of, well, just don't do it again. And the show's catchphrase is actually by Penelope of the show, and it's this. So Penelope at the end of every episode goes, "Oh, Marjorie, oh, dearie me, Marjorie, oh, dear." And it's just, being an old, almost not quite Victorian, but just kind of like, why would you do this? And that's episode 1. That is the pilot of Marjorie's Porridge. Much more fun to come. In episode 2, basically, this was the least developed episode of the season, but, Marjorie wakes up and eats her porridge and scotch, and with a little bit of continuity, we do see from the last episode the constable, who is being the only person in town trying to prosecute Marjorie for killing the nun. So there is a small amount of continuity, but the thing with it is you really don't know where the continuity is going to come from. It's just like one of those little, you know the South Park episodes that had basically the last few ones have been kind of season-wide plots. So it's sort of like that, but on a much smaller scale. So Marjorie wakes up, eats her porridge and scotch, while the family discusses the constable being the only person trying to prosecute Marjorie. They hear this probably on the radio, who knows. And basically, Marjorie is freaking out, and she tries to buy some arsenic. So I don't know where the hell she gets arsenic. Maybe she had it back from World War II. Maybe they used it like Zyklon B back then. I don't know. I'm just kind of hypothesizing here. I'm kind of improvising this one. So she does have some arsenic, and she, I think she mistakes it for sleeping pills or something, maybe a little bit of Xannies. They didn't really have Xannies back then, did they? But anyway, she goes to meet the constable to discuss what exactly it is that's going on, makes him a pot of tea, because, you know, that's the British Isles, they love that kind of thing, and she just puts a little dash of arsenic in the constable's tea. Why do I feel like I've heard this one before? Probably because I have. So anyway, this kills him. And yet again, there is a town-wide witch hunt for the perpetrator, which is, of course, our wonderful protagonist, the beautiful old British nanny, Marjorie. And basically, they find out Marjorie was the perp, and they're like, oh, this little old lady, she probably has dementia, she has a little bit of Alzheimer's, and so we see Penelope again pull the entire, oh, dearie me, Marjorie, oh, dearie me, you killed the constable, bruv, you killed him, me, bruv. And, that's episode 2 in a nutshell. It was the lead. I had to improvise a little bit for this one, but yeah, episode 2, folks. In episode 3, Marjorie starts off the day, you know, with her normal bowl of porridge and her pint of scotch. And this is actually the first episode that is a crossover episode. So Abigail comes into the kitchen speaking about a sweet small dog she sees every day on her way to the schoolhouse. And it's a crossover episode with the TV show Come Outside. It was actually a British children's program back in the 90s. So Marjorie actually goes on her morning walk and encounters the abode of Auntie Mabel from Come Outside. And then she sees Auntie Mabel's wee dog Pippin and then wants to pet it, but Auntie Mabel actually knows of Marjorie's antics. And she basically tells her to fuck off. So Marjorie actually drop kicks Auntie Mabel because that's just what Marjorie does. And she kills her and then steals the small dog Pippin from Auntie Mabel. And upon escaping, actually trips and falls, which actually exposes Pippin to a rabid raccoon, which gives him rabies. And I don't know how much you know about rabid raccoons in the UK, but they did stumble upon one, so that's how Pippin got rabies. And so Marjorie kidnaps the rabid Pippin and then gets lost in a forage to the montage of the song the Come Outside theme song. If you haven't heard it, it's this.
Look up, look down, look all around. Up in the air or on the ground. Come for a walk, come for a ride. There's so much to see, so come outside.
So they get lost in the woods to that song right there, and that's their montage for running into the woods, and they live in the woods for about a solid 3 days, and they are equipped with nothing but 2 growlers full of scotch, which Marjorie thinks is a good idea to bring with her on her morning walk. So Marjorie actually, being the sweet old lady that she is, she manifests a way to communicate with the small rabid dog Pippin, who manages basically to kill everything that is around to be killed. So Pippin kills rabbits, Pippin kills squirrels, pigeons. I don't know what the hell's in the UK. So yes, and so the 2 actually eat off of that. And then after that, a town-wide search for Marjorie happens until eventually the constable, this is a non-continuity here, finds Marjorie and Pippin stumbling out of the forest, very drunk, and Pippin is still very rabid. So they eventually do cure Pippin of his rabies, so it was diagnosed by the town's, witch doctor, so it was Dr. Blair, who is the town's, witch doctor, resident idiot doctor, vet physician, and genius. So Pippin evidently had mad dog disease. And, at the end of every episode, Penelope goes, "Oh, Marjorie, you nearly killed wee Pip, dearie me." So that's episode 3, folks. For episode 4, it starts off the same, and this one's a good episode if you consider yourself a Doctor Who person. I don't, personally. I think I've seen, one episode. But, it just wasn't for me. But this one is for you if you do like Doctor Who. It's really good. Marjorie is eating her porridge, as always, having her glass of scotch, and then Nigel mentions something about whatever Doctor Who doctor is current, and the fact that he or she, isn't it a girl? I think there was a big controversy about the Doctor Who doctor being a girl for some reason. And I don't know, what is it, he, she, I don't know. But they're coming to a town for it is coming to a town for a fan visit, and Marjorie is like all British people who are humongous fans of Doctor Who, and she becomes excited and finds her, I think it's a girl, she finds her and encounters I think it's the 11th Doctor, who asks her for directions. And then Marjorie asks the doctor for directions, and then the doctor doesn't know, and then Marjorie is, she's drunk, she is Alzheimer's, she also has super strength sometimes, it's really kind of random. So in a drunken stupor, hits the doctor with her cane with a strange drunken strength, causing her to fly into a nearby tree and die immediately. Marjorie then returns home, only to find a rabid mob of Doctor Who fans policing the streets, I don't know, freaking Doctor Who death squads out here, and they're looking for the killer of the Doctor. And the rabid fan base scours the town, eventually discovering that Marjorie is the culprit, but luckily Penelope talks them down somehow. Penelope is just sensible, good English lady, and then chastises Marjorie lightly later. And, she says something like, "Oh, dearie me, Marjorie, you killed the fan base. Oh, Marjorie," because I think in the episode, Marjorie actually ends up committing some sort of violence against the fan base. I don't know. There's probably a big war. This is just what's going on. So that's episode 4, folks. Episode 5, this episode actually generated a fair amount of controversy, and that's probably why the reviews weren't super good. It was called Islamophobic, so they didn't like how this episode went down. This, it's not good. It wouldn't be shown on the UK today, I'll tell you that much. So anyways, in episode 5, Marjorie's eating her porridge, drinking her scotch, and they're listening to the radio. They're listening to the radio about a group of North African refugees that move to Chartworth Brown, and then they create a mosque, which that's perfectly fine. Yes, on her morning walk, Marjorie drunkenly befriends the group of North Africans who invite her to the mosque. While in the mosque, she drunkenly stumbles upon a stash of explosives brought by one of the more secretly radicalized members, although in her naivete, she mistakes them for Christmas lights. So she, being the good-willed old English nanny that she is, she decides to help the mosque decorate, and decorates the outside of the mosque, who she thinks is a church, that's the Alzheimer's, with these Christmas lights, and she has a button to turn on the lights. The next day, she drunkenly passes by the mosque and has a moment of clarity where she remembers she has the button to turn on the lights, and she wants to make the mosque beautiful with the Christmas lights that are actually explosives. And then she turns them on and accidentally blows up the mosque, which kills the North Africans in the mosque. And then she goes back to the family, huddled around the radio, hearing of the local terrorist attack, which was done by her, only to find out that Marjorie was the one behind it. And so Penelope does the entire thing, oh dearie me, Marjorie, whatever shall we do? So, yeah, this was one of the more controversial episodes. It probably wouldn't be aired in the UK today, but it was part of the first season. Or it is going to be. It'll probably have a huge controversy. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm just here to tell you what's going on. So that's episode 5, folks. And now we are at the season finale. It is kind of the opposite of the last one, where the progressives didn't like the last one, but they did kind of like this one, so I guess it all evens out. I'll kind of give some commentary on the political themes of the show after this. So essentially, after hearing upon Marjorie essentially committing an anti-Muslim terrorist attack in Chartworth's Brown, the family hears on the news in the morning that Marjorie is now the mascot of the far-right Native Boys gang. Yes, I made that up. Who set up camp in the town. And during her morning walk, one of the skinheads sees her and tries to recruit her into joining their gang of far-right nonsense, whatever the hell that is, which for some reason Marjorie believes is a weekly bridge club. And she actually has the bag of arsenic from episode 2, and on her first day of the meeting, she puts this arsenic, which I think she believes is sugar. And, Marjorie, she's trying to put herself on a diet. Scotch and porridge, it puts some pounds on. So she's not going to have these cookies, but she's going to make them. So she makes these cookies for the Bridge Club, so she believes, and puts the arsenic in, which she believes to be flour. And she goes to the club, and they all really like her cookies, and then they drop dead. And, that's kind of what Marjorie does. She's like, oh, okay, I guess they're going to take a nap now. And then Marjorie goes home, and she, of course, you can guess, they hear about the meeting. Penelope, they have a town-wide witch hunt and all that, and then they find Marjorie, and they're like, oh, well, just don't do it again, with Penelope going, oh dear, Marjorie, oh dear. So that is episode 6 right there. And that is the first season of Marjorie's Porridge, folks. So I hope you enjoyed it. There, just a little bit more commentary on this. So this is an apolitical show. There are no specific political themes within the show. And much like Seinfeld before it, it was a common motif of the series will be no hugging and no learning. At least that's what was intended. So it does not promote secular progressivism, and that actually earns a bit of the ire from that kind of crowd, but nor does it really endorse conservatism or any right-wing views either. So it strives to be very down the middle. So it's going to be seen as a very neutral television program. So one that stands really for nothing, and it essentially kind of I guess if it stands for anything, it comedifies, if that's a word, violence and death, much kind of like those, so it's kind of an absolute caricature of its main character. So think of it as similar to Super Jail or Metalocalypse on Adult Swim. So if you want to get any takeaways from the show, the only one that I can think of right now is don't attribute to malice when stupidity will suffice. Marjorie is a little old lady with some very obviously extreme problems, but after all of these, she is still loyal to and loved by her family, regardless of if she deserves it or not. One may also come across maybe some anti-natalist themes due to the violent nature of the show, or maybe a far-right or far-left theme, depending on which episode you watch. So, with the nihilistic ethos of Marjorie's Porridge, all it really does is deconstruct the old-style BBC television programs such as Father Ted, Doctor Who, Come Outside, but it doesn't offer really anything in terms of any alternatives to the deconstruction. So, with all of this said, it wouldn't really lend well to metamodern or new sincerity, at least kind of with that in mind. But there is a degree of sincerity within it in that the family has towards one another the love and affection they have even towards their genocidal grandma, which may be unintentionally genocidal, but that's something else entirely. And so it's a testament to the cynical earnestness found in current television programs. So thank you for listening. I hope you tune in to Marjorie's Porridge, found on BBC and coming to you soon. Take care.